This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air on our Twitch, Facebook channels for the first time with Dr. Barrett Matthews. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing marvelously well and improving, my friend.
So that's great. You're in New Hampshire for the next couple of days, but I'm safe and warm inside my studio here. We are a fast on Newsly. You can see that icon up there that says listen on Newsly. So if you use coupon code GHOST, you get 1 month free premium subscription so you can stop scrolling and start listening. This podcast will be on Newsly later tonight. And use that code to get 1 free month premium subscription. And thank you again for being on the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast.
Man, it's a pleasure to be here.
So we do have your link, and for people who are going to be on the audio version of the podcast, I always like to mention what the link actually says so they can actually understand it. So it's www.5waystoPayingClients.com.
Correct.
And what do people get when they go there? Just to get people like that up front.
Sure. When they go to www.5waystoPayingClients.com, and that's the number 5, what they're going to get is a training where I talk about why people are not getting paying clients and what can help them in doing that. It's a complimentary training that I'm giving to you just for paying attention to the podcast. So all you got to do is just go to 5waystoPayingClients.com, and that's the number 5. And I hope you enjoy it.
That's cool. Yeah, so it's always good to make sure that we understand there's a lot of podcasts are actually listened to, and we do convert this video to audio. A lot of people listen rather than view. Video podcasting is kind of new, but yeah, primarily the audiences are audio. And I was always like, oh wow, I gotta be mindful of that. But so just to get into the first question that I wanted to get into was like, how did you start in media? And what made you want to use media in this type of form?
Depends on how much time you have. I started in media back in 1984. So that just gives you an idea. I actually was in college. I went to Hampton University, and I started out as an architecture major. And architecture kicked my butt all up and down the place. And I knew I needed to get out of that major and change. And I had no idea what I wanted to major in, to be honest with you. And my sister said to me, well, you've always been interested in television and radio. And I'll be honest, my response was, well, isn't everybody? I didn't see it as a major. I just saw it as something everybody's interested in TV and radio. Well, I changed my major to mass media arts, and my grades shot up. I started relaxing. I had fun. It was just, wow, this is what I like doing. And, I started taking part in writing for the school newspaper. I started, I was heavily into sports. So I was a sportscaster on the school news station. I used to host post-game TV shows. I became the radio station play-by-play announcer, and I did color announcing sometimes. I even ended up becoming the radio station sports director. And it just became so much fun to me doing media. And we used to give nicknames. Some people called me Mr. Mass Media at some point because I was just doing everything. But it was something that I really enjoyed doing. And I did internships while I was in college at different TV stations nearby. And then I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. I did an internship at WUSA TV. And I had the pleasure of working with a sportscaster there who was just a weekend sports announcer at the time. And he did some fill-in during the week. And you all probably know him from CBS now. His name's James Brown. Well, he was working there. And he took me under his wing. That's pretty much the best way I can put it. He took me under his wing, wanted me to go out to different places with him and everything. And he even helped me with my senior thesis in college. And then when I got out of school, he helped put in a word for me that helped me get hired as an assistant director at the news station. Then later, while I'm working at the news station, which was so much fun, then he asked would I be interested in working for the network up at CBS, because he was climbing that ladder and he wanted to bring some people with him, which was wonderful on his part. And I got an interview with CBS, ended up getting a job there eventually as a production assistant / researcher. So I was one of the people giving a lot of the NFL research. For when you heard the announcers giving the information, they got it from us. And that was cool. Yeah, it was fun. I was working back then, but I'm an old man, so I was working with like Brent Musburger and Irv Cross then, and so they were in the studio. Yeah, it was fun, and as so later, long story short, they decided not to renew my contract. I'm not going into that part, but I then ended up working locally here at a cable network station, where I worked in production there. And I got out of media for a good while. And what happened was I started doing more business, dealing with insurances, dealing with real estate, dealing with appraising and so forth. But no matter what I kept doing, something kept calling me back, do something that was related to media, because it was just in me. And about, I don't know, probably 10 years or more ago, I was working with a team of people and someone saw me working with them, and I was in a leadership role. And they said, wow, you're really hard on those people. You should be some type of action coach or some productivity coach. And I said, oh, okay. He said, yeah, but you need to write a book. And I said, really? He said, yeah, you need to write a book. Well, long story short, I ended up writing a book. So that was a form of media I put out. And then I ended up hosting an online radio show, and I talked about my book. I talked about a lot of different things, interviewed a lot of people. And next thing I know, I'm back in it again, man. I started hosting this show, hosting another show, and that lasted for years. I wrote another book then. Then I took a little break, and I mean a little break. And that same guy who asked me to write a book, he has a large following. He started an organization called Black CEO. And he had a big presence, like 30-something thousand people following in this community on Facebook. It's still there. And he wanted to start a morning show online. So we started the Black CEO morning show. Little did I know that he had set me up, because he had me and a lot of other co-hosts. And next thing I know, I'm the only one running the show. And he said that was on purpose, because he knew I was the only one that had real media experience. So that led to me doing that for a couple of years. And then I said, you know what? There are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that need help being more productive with their business. So I started coaching people on being more productive. And I was telling them, I said, start a podcast. I said, because your message can stay out there while you're still working on running your business. But then I realized that they weren't doing it. Now, keep in mind, I was coaching productivity, coaching get it done. But I realized something. I had a big epiphany that people don't want to get things done.
Yeah.
People would rather have things done.
Yeah.
So I created a format where I can have a done for you podcast put in place for them. So then I started doing that for people, putting together the podcast. Then I said, you know what, that's not enough, because everybody that wants to be your client does not listen to podcasts. Now, we all consume information through one form of media or another, but they may want to read books. If you don't have a book, you're missing them. If you don't have a streaming TV channel and that's what they want to watch, then you're missing them. So what I started was a program where I make sure that people can get involved in various forms of media at the same time, and we can still have that done for you format done for them. So that's how I got into it, and that's what led me to where I am right now.
So that's where you get this kind of be everywhere all at once
Exactly.
idea.
Exactly. So yeah.
But the thing that's interesting is, like, yeah, you were initially like in TV radio, right? And then you segged into online. And then when you went into that online at the time, I guess like podcasts might not have really been there, and then they appeared. Do you remember like what year that was for you when the podcast started showing up?
I'll be honest. I think I was late to the game. I think podcasts had been around when I started doing online radio, but online radio was popular. And I had friends who were doing online radio who had built, like a good friend of mine, may he rest in peace, Mr. Clark Garrison. He started an online community with Blog Talk Radio, where he actually built a network with Blog Talk Radio. And I
Mhm.
learned from him, and then I got on his network and started doing shows on his network and working with him and helped him to bring. I brought in my radio experience and helped him a little bit, so we just kept feeding back from each
Yeah.
other. But podcasting, I believe, was already going. I was just late to the game, and then when I
Yeah.
saw it,
'Cause
I
I
said, "Hey, I like this better."
yeah, I started like 2016. Some guy came to me from New York and had seen all my work. I'm a musician. He saw all my work on SoundCloud and he said, I want to interview. And I didn't even know what it was. I said, was that like a radio interview? And then from there, we liked each other so much. We did a podcast. From that
There
interview,
you
we did a
go.
podcast for like 6 months. And then I started doing it on my own. And then I just never stopped. And we're up to like over 800 episodes since 2016. People tell me in the podcast games, like people don't last that long. And
They don't.
I've kind of gone beyond what they tell me you should do, and I keep on doing more.
Man,
So
they last
yeah, it's
most.
just like,
They last a month usually.
well, it's a dedication. You kind of have to have. I'm a musician, so I get up and I practice. So like I think musicians and athletes, we have to practice. Like the
Yeah,
only way you get good is you have to practice, right? You
you're
have to
right.
work out. You do the work. So when you're a podcaster, like if you want to do it, you got to do it, which means you got to do the show. And if you procrastinate, I knew all kinds of people that said, "Oh, I want to do it," and then they never even got the
That's
launch
right.
because they just
Right.
it's dedication. You have to take the time. Anything that you do is worthwhile. You got to spend some time actually honing your craft a little bit, at
I
least.
actually, I used to tell people, I said, "You've been talking about a podcast for 2 years. Why don't we just get this thing set up in 2 days?" So- because
Yeah,
it,
it
it
doesn't
doesn't
take that
take
long.
long to get started. It doesn't. It doesn't. But
No, I mean,
it's funny.
I
That you said
progressively
that.
yeah.
Well, no, I was just saying it's funny
Well, when
that
I
you said that.
progressively yeah.
A lot of people they will talk about doing it and they want to do it, but like you said, they got to have the dedication. And I think a lot of them go into it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, maybe. I did it because I love it. It's the same
See?
reason I do music. It's like I just like talking and I like writing and I like communicating. I like connecting with people. And I did it before the pandemic. Like I was doing the Family Roast podcast in 2016 for 4 years before the pandemic. It was
See?
going before it even happened. And so the idea was just I think the dedication, but also like as a musician, like you don't just do music and because if you don't hit the top 10, then you stop. I've been playing
Exactly.
music since I was 17. I'm 55. So I just do it
Right.
because I like it.
Right. And I mean, I'm also a musician as well, and I was an athlete. And the thing is, a lot of people, they want to start podcasts because first thing they say is, "Well, how can I make money at it?" That means there's no real love for it. Just like as a
Yeah.
musician, you do it because you love music. As an athlete, you play because you
Yeah.
love the game. If you don't love, I tell people, the moment that podcasting becomes a chore to you, you got to get out of it.
You shouldn't do it. It's like music. You're a musician. You do it. Not there's so many musicians. They're not going to all hit the top 10, right?
No,
What I find is if I'm a musician and I care about it. I get opportunities just because I'm so passionate about what I do. I bring people to me. I
right?
get other people want me to produce, want me to show up on records. And you might not hear the Peg or Phantom is the biggest person around, but I've got a Rolodex like 400 other artists that I can hang around with and do stuff, and I can get stuff done because people see that I'm dedicated. I go to do something, I do it. I don't just say I'm going to do it. I do
There you
it.
go. And that's the thing, though. I mean, it applies in podcasting. If you're going to do it, just do it. And the thing is, it can be so much fun if you allow it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make it profitable because I started finding ways to make money. It wasn't like I what money
Yeah,
wasn't the big thing. And
right.
and then because I care, then I started getting people who just came to me and gave me opportunities because they saw that I was always there. Because I think just
Hmm.
coming, showing up, like I always tell you, my grandpa was like, you just got to show up.
Yeah,
Showing up is like half the thing. Either you show up, then things happen. And so I
and
think
you're
then
right.
you start people. Yeah, you see you're consistent. Then you can get things going.
You're right. And there, like you said, there are ways to make money podcasting, but if that's your only reason for starting it, then you might not want to start it because it's going to take
Yeah, yeah.
time before you get to that point.
Yeah, it's just hard to get to that kind of sweet spot. Like anything you do, you get to the sweet spot where you kinda it feels
Anything.
natural, you're doing it, things start falling in place. It just feels like that the things are it's just comfortable to do. Like, if you're comfortable in your zone, you're
Yep,
comfortable in your personality and who you present, and you're not trying to, like, reinvent yourself every week, then you know that you're kinda working.
that's correct. You're right.
So what keeps people from using media to help themselves get paying clients? And why do you think some people are kind of scared? I mean, people could be scared of the radio, could be scared of TV, scared of the net, scared of podcasts, scared of it's like what makes people want to use different tools and get over the fear?
Well, here's the thing, and it's funny you put it like that because people are already using media. Every time you hop on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, you're using media. Every time you write an article or write something that a poem or something, you're using media. Media comes in many forms. It's really just a vessel in which you transmit a message, and there's various forms of media. So as far as being afraid of or why they don't do it, I think a lot of it has to do with we don't know the power of it, and we don't know the what ability we have now. Keep in mind, when I started in media back in the mid 80s, there was no such thing as the internet. There was no social media.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah.
when I started in media, telling how old I am, and you're 55, I'll be 58 this year. But we were using tapes. So just to tell you how
Yeah,
long
I
ago that
remember
was,
tape.
we were
I
using
remember
tapes.
that.
Yeah, so it was quite some time ago, but the thing is, media has changed. It's evolved. So
Yeah,
now, and I tell people this, music is literally at your fingertips. So you can get on your
yeah,
computer and create media. You don't
yeah.
and see what I say that a lot of people don't know what's going on. We've been taught. I mean, you think about it from when we were coming up. If you wanted to be on someone's radio show or TV show, you had to hope that they found you interesting enough to contact you and say, "Hey, we'd like to interview you," and that you hire someone to pitch you to these different places. No more. Like you said, you started in 2016. You started your own. You don't need to wait on anyone, and that's one of the things I'm trying to get across to people. Times have changed. You don't have to wait on anyone to give you permission or to ask you to be on their program. Keep in mind, years ago, there was no such thing as someone self-publishing a book. Now you have to go to a publishing company.
Oh
Now you
yeah.
can do your own. I mean, you think about it, you can shoot a movie with an iPhone now. So it's totally
Yeah.
different now.
I got
Right.
it right. Yeah.
The world has
Yeah.
changed so much. So it's just a different world, and we have to
Well,
adapt to it and understand
yeah.
we have access to it now.
Yeah, McKenna. I mean, if what you see here is a home studio full of electronic instruments. And I'm kind of old
See?
school, but I have all these Moogs and Rolands and Yamahas, and I use track recorders, but I use the modern technology of podcasting to do bedroom producer festivals with bands that I interview all over the world. I am
That's
able to
cool.
push my own records. I'm able to collaborate. I'm collaborating with an artist in Japan. I'm collaborating with an artist
See?
in the US and a game developer. And so you can do stuff, and I haven't even left this room.
Exactly.
You used to have
Exactly.
to go to Olympia's Electric Lady. Yeah, you used to have to go to Electric
And,
Lady
and
or
think about
Olympia. And now I have my own. Yeah.
and think about how much money you would have to spend renting out a studio to do something like this.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I can record. It's my bedroom studio, so I don't have to go pay for that recording time. Some bands were spending 500,000, $1 million
Yes,
to record, and
yes.
they would go to that Sound or Electric Lady or these big studios. And they would have to have these gigantic budgets. They would cut into their royalties and their the money that they were getting. Their advance, half is going and half is going to actually paying for the recording.
Yeah.
And now you don't have to pay all that.
You don't. You don't. Like I said, and so that's the point I'm trying to get to people to understand is that you have access now. You don't have to wait on someone to do these things. You don't. No people are sitting there waiting for someone to call their name. Like call your own name. Just put your content out there. And one of the things that I lead with all the time is podcasting. And the reason I lead with podcasting as the form of media to start with is because if it's something you love, like if I asked you to talk about music, you could talk about music all day long because it's something you love. If I ask you to write about it, you have to think about what you're going to write. You don't have to think about what you're going to say all the time. Some people should more, but you don't have to think about it all the time. You can just talk about it and record it. And you got yourself a podcast. And you get better as you go, but at least
I mean, the whole idea was, that's how I started. I started initially talking with another music lover from New York. It was a DJ, a guy named Rock Tunes. And then I said, well, you know what? I'm going to find all these emerging and independent artists I like because I'm a musician and a musician. And I felt there was kind of a lack of pushing independent emerging artists. There's like just trying to grab the hot artists. And I wanted to do like a behind the music with people who were not known. And that was my whole core thing. And that's what I did. And I still do it. But podcasting has expanded to the point where I've talked to shamans and life coaches and therapists. And it's just, people I find interesting. And I say, well, how does that connect? Well, when you're a musician, you take everything around you. And, talking to a shaman is cool because the Beatles were like shamans, talking to somebody who's a life coach, Marvin Gaye's a life coach. John Lennon was a life coach, that's the way I look at it. So it's like, it's not that different. So I try to find parallels between art and things that people don't think are separate from art. And that's been kind of like my focus.
I like that. That's very profound. I like what you said about those musicians being life coaches. Bob Dylan was one too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Bob Marley. I mean, look, he took Rastafarianism and then put it into music. So it's spiritualism within music, within politics, the same like Dylan level stuff going on in his music. And then it had the spiritual quality, like a Stevie Wonder spiritualism that you can hear like in Innervisions and songs like Heal Life. And you get this kind of thing. He's like a guru. He was like a shaman. He was like the one of the ultimate shamans. They like at that level, and still people are influenced at what he wrote. Because if you look at what he wrote, it's like this is coming from like really deep places, and that's why I try to I talk to writers or therapists or philosophers or all kinds of people. I like to take art. And art is not devoid from the rest of your life. And I try to show that like, literature and art and music is connected to the corporate world because like creative people tend to be in that zone, so that's where I try to push it. And I say what you're doing, everything you do as a person, when you have an idea, that's being creative. And if you have an idea to help people make money or get clients, that's still a creative function. That's a creative part of your brain, and you're helping people like as a mentor or a teacher. It's still it's a cool thing, and it can intersect. And this is why I try to be so narrow. I think people like to go into silos, and I like to make things more expansive.
I like that.
So another thing you're saying, the podcast is a really cool way to start with marketing, but when you do that, if you're going to use it for marketing, you have to. How often do you need to do that podcast for it to be effective as a marketing tool?
Well, you first of all, you got to start it first. That's the main thing. Just start it. I like to say no less than twice a month. No less than that. I like to do mine once a week. Some people like to do them once a day. Some people do them 2 or 3 times a day. But I don't. But I think to be effective, you should. at least twice a month, I think, because otherwise, because we have a very, very short attention span as a society. And if you don't keep
Yeah.
people's attention, if you don't keep them waiting for if you don't keep them, ready for something, they're going to go find something else. And you don't want them to
Yeah. For
find
the,
another.
yeah. I guess the other question is like when you're in a marketing mode,
Mhm.
is it because of the attention span, because of like reels and shorts and TikTok? Um, when you're in a marketing mode, do you think the length of the podcast should be like 15 minutes or a half hour, an hour? Is there a certain limit?
I they say that the sweet spot of a podcast, as far as listenership, is between 25 to 40 minutes of the podcast. Now, you just alluded to shorts. That's a different thing. Now, if you edit it and put it into shorts
Mhm.
and let clips go out, then yeah, like TikTok, 15 seconds is all you really need to get their attention,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're not gonna people on TikTok, their whole thing is I want this to be quick. That's the whole thing
Yeah.
about people
Yeah,
that
it's like
watch
real,
TikTok.
like
Yeah,
90
they want
seconds.
real, right,
You know,
right.
you get
They
these
want-
90 seconds. Yeah, reels. I've been actually engaging on reels pretty good. I actually got monetized. That I got engaged. I was engaging
There
so
you
good,
go.
and I
Congratulations.
just found a way to clip my podcast into like 90-second bits that
Hmm.
started getting thousands of plays. And I'm like, wow, that's actually kicking. It's working. And it draws people into the big one because I put the
Yeah,
hyperlink and I get people to go to the 45-minute one or the 50-minute one.
and
But
exactly,
it's just,
and that's what you do.
yeah, that's what you want. You want them to come somewhere else. It's click through.
But yeah, I mean but that's how you do it. You gotta the podcast can be longer, but when you're dealing with the marketing, you want to market in short bites. I mean, if you think about it, think about a movie trailer. You know,
Yeah.
when you're sitting at home watching a TV show and they got a new movie coming up, they don't let the movie trailer run for 25 minutes. The movie trailer may run for 30 to 60 seconds and it's done. And
Yeah, yeah.
they got your attention enough to make you interested enough to want to watch the whole movie. Same thing here. When you do a podcast, you want to let something out just to get their interest enough to listen to the whole podcast or to watch the whole podcast. But you don't want to take up all their time with that, with just marketing to them.
Yeah, 'cause I started getting into tools like being able to use Facebook events and having pre-scheduled,
Yes.
like YouTube, because the way I do it as a live podcast, I, I'm able to take advantage of certain tools that allow me to actually schedule a Facebook event or a YouTube event,
Hmm.
maybe a couple like a week. Some of my podcasts are scheduled out till April, so I've got these events already out there
Nice.
for my guest and my host to be able to actually use with and then build up the anticipation, which
Yeah.
is kind of like if you're a musician, you do like a little bit of a clip of a song
I
and
mean,
you throw it
and
out as a preview.
I actually looked at some of your clips because if I'm going to be on the show, I wanted to see a little bit of it. So I looked at some of your clips you did just that. You just gave it a little tease.
Yeah, that I find it works because everything, if you're a musician, we try to do that. We
Hmm.
use the reels and TikTok real heavy. They
Yeah.
actually are doing very well. It's breaking a lot of people outside of the normal structure. There are people that would have never got through the gate on TikTok. They're able to get big record contracts after
Yep.
because they broke through and they would have never selected because they come out of the problem with the industry is they just want to clone. They just
Yeah.
clone whatever's
Oh,
in the top 10 and make 1,000 copies and they burn it out. And then what the originality is coming out of shorts and reels and TikTok and
you are speaking
all
the
these other
truth.
places.
You're speaking the truth. That's true. They want claims, and
But
you have to make sure you stand out.
yeah, that's the whole thing with I try to tell people when I'm a producer, if I hear somebody's demo, I don't want to make them sound like me, right? Because it's
Right.
already a Fan Electric Ghost. So I want to, as a producer, not replicate me or replicate the last 10 artists I produced. I will
Right.
take their demo and make them sound like the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that you can apply that when you're dealing with people. Is that you make them able to market the best unique piece of what you do.
I agree. And I mean, it's like when I told you I'm a musician too. I used to be in a band in Atlanta, and we were a cover band, but we never covered the song the same way it was recorded.
Yeah, yeah, that's the
We
point.
always did it
That's the
differently.
point.
Right.
But that's the whole thing with like improvisation. Like that I really am kind of tongue tied with the DJ world because I see people using these CDJs and I got a Moog, I've got a Roland Juno, right? I've got, I've got Yamahas, pianos and stuff. And I see these people saying they're musicians and they're clipping other musicians' work and rearranging it and then saying they're an artist and they got a brand new song. I said, well, those are like 20 songs strung together. That's not a brand new song.
I had this conversation years ago. I was when I was with this band, and we had this little picnic, and this kid comes around, and he said he's a musician. And I said, "Oh, really? What do you play?" He said, "I create beats." I said, "Oh, you're a drummer?" He goes, "No, no, no. I create beats on the computer." I said, "Son, you're not a musician." I said, "Those beats are already recorded." I said, "That's like
Yeah,
me.
it's not like
That's like me selecting a song on the radio and saying I'm a DJ just because I selected a song." Like, no, you're just selecting pre-recorded beats and putting them together. That doesn't make you a musician. I said there are people working hard late into the night with their beats who are really really drumming, working on their skills, their paradiddles, their rolls, and so forth. I said, no, that's a musician. So
yeah, yeah.
it's funny. I had that conversation before, so that's funny you said it like that.
Yeah, well, I'm a synthesis, but I have a Moog analog drum machine, and
Oh
I
man,
actually am not sampling. I'm actually
right. I know
taking
what you're
beat
doing.
weight, but it's a little more complicated than that, right? And I'm using controlled voltage and running it through LFOs and envelope
Yeah.
generators. And so I'm like a little mad scientist putting stuff together.
Yeah, I
Now
know what
I
you
have my
mean.
keyboard and I can trigger stuff with my board. And I got pedals and stuff I can trigger, but like I am actually doing sound design. Sound
Mm,
design is different than somebody sampling
right,
and clipping.
right.
And I see these like DJs doing these concerts and they're hopping up and down on trampolines. And they look like, either like they're workout type of people, like Jack LaLanne or something, or they
Oh
look like
god.
they're models and they spend more time jumping around and posing and they're not
Yeah.
even touching their board. In addition, I don't see them even touching their board. It's like if I'm playing my Moog, I'm actually playing the Moog.
Yes,
I'm not
exactly.
jumping around,
Exactly. It's because theirs is already
you know,
pre-recorded and they're just playing the
it's
recording.
all pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, okay, but yeah, so this like the whole thing I get into is like this AI world. So I'm kind of segging
Mhm.
into there's a lot of AI being used for marketing, for music, for advertising. What's your kind of feel for the AI versus actual somebody that has like
I mean,
knowledge and skill set to actually help you?
I am a fan of AI. I'm a fan of AI because that's, I mean, first of all, it's not where we're going, it's where we are. So it's like I'm a fan of
Yeah, yeah.
AI, but I also so it's just like you have to have a temperance for everything. You have to be able to say, okay, I need to create that myself. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was looking to hire a virtual assistant, and I sent them a series of questions about working with me. And I can tell by their answers. I said, "This is AI. Their answers are all AI." So I can tell that they were artificially
Wasn't
generated.
working.
What's you say?
Yeah. When some cases AI, like I can give an example. There's some Roland synths that have AI built in, thing called an
Uh huh.
intelligent arpeggiator, and it will actually follow your chords and come up with a bass line follows where you change your chords.
Wow.
And so it actually is useful when you do a demo, and then you can actually go
Mhm.
into it and then change the notes. You can actually say, okay, all right, that's
Wow.
like a rough draft. So I can see tools like that I don't have but I do have like a problem that like tries to write the whole song.
Right.
If
Well,
you go and let it just clip like a DJ, and then you really don't do any work, and you just let it, well, I want to sound like Zeppelin, or I want to sound like Stevie Wonder, and then it goes and makes this thing, and you really
yeah.
didn't do it. Then that's where I feel like, yeah, I can have an assistant help me with a
Right.
bass line or help me
Or
with
even
a
like
kick drum, but I
if
don't
it's
want
going
to
to
do the whole thing, you know?
right, exactly. The whole if you're going to take some of my content and then generate that, then at least I know my content is there. But if it's the whole thing done with AI, I got a problem with that. I was at a conference recently, a podcasting conference, and the gentleman got up there and he was talking about using AI. He actually wrote a whole children's book using AI. Then he used another
Wow.
AI to create the animation, the animation for the
The
children's book.
cartoon.
Yeah,
Wow.
but he did the right thing. What he did, he published the book and printed it, and he said this book was written by artificial intelligence. So
Wow.
he at least he did the
I
right thing
wonder,
and
like, the
credited.
problem yeah. Yeah, the problem I have with it is like when my daughter is an artist, and
Hmm.
she's a lot of graphic artists have been kind of complaining that AI goes and grabs existing artwork that was done by real
Oh
artists
yeah,
and then tries to act like it was artificially created, and it's actually been created and not being credited,
yeah. And see
and
that
people
is
aren't
an issue.
royalties.
You're right.
Like in
That
music,
is an
yeah, I got a problem with people not getting royalties for something that actually wasn't made
that's
up.
an excellent point. It's an excellent point because a lot of these artists don't have a way to say we own that. Like for instance, if I'm a writer, I wrote
Yeah,
a
license
book,
like music.
or like in writing books, it's a there's plagiarism and stuff, but the artists don't really have that. And yeah, that's a
Yeah, they
very good
never
point.
created
I hadn't
like
thought
a
about that.
digital rights man. I was telling my daughters, like, artists need to have like a BMI cap
Yeah,
or like, the digital rights management. Like when I copyright one of my songs and I publish through my publisher, and somebody uses 8 bars of my song, it
yeah.
triggers a thing and they go after 'em
Tell your
because
daughter
it
that she started.
understood. But yeah, I've been telling my daughters you need to get her art elective need to talk to some young lawyers and start
Yeah,
coming up with the same kind of digital rights that's done for music
yeah. They
and
should.
writing for artwork
They should. Yeah, don't
because
complain about
otherwise he's
it.
gonna rip them off.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about that
Yeah,
until you
you
said
gotta
it.
I think you gotta standard.
I hadn't
Yeah, I
thought
think it's a
about that.
big issue for graphic artists because they haven't gone and, unless you create a cartoon, then you go and you copyright it, right? Like my
Right,
daughter creates cartoon characters and she does copyright and trademark. But when you're
right.
doing individual pieces, a lot of times they don't get copyrighted, and this is where the AI,
Yeah.
guys are kind of taking advantage of, all that they find in the net and acting like it's auto generated from nowhere, and it's actually coming from real artists. So I
That
mean,
and that's an
that's another.
excellent point. It's a truly excellent point. I hadn't thought about it, but you're right.
The idea of being present, I mean, I try that. I'm doing it kind of right now. We're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, we're
Mhm.
on Facebook all at once because there are
Yep.
tools out there that can do that. But when you mean omnipresent, can not just necessarily all at the same time, but can you talk more about how you think people should take advantage of capabilities to do that?
Yeah, because what you're doing right now is you're streaming one time. Now, streaming is one form of media. Streaming video is one form of media. Now, let's talk about the audio podcasting. That's another form of media because you and I both know that people that watch podcasts are not the same people that listen to podcasts. Those are usually
Oh yeah,
different people.
yeah, yeah.
Then you have written content, written books. You have ebooks, blogs. That's another thing. You can actually take the content from your podcast, transcribe it, and turn it into an ebook, maybe even a physical book. That's another form of content that's out there. You can actually set up another
Oh,
camera
I haven't thought of
and
that.
follow you around and shoot a documentary about how you put together your podcast, how you function with music. That's another form of media. I could take several episodes, string them together, and turn that into a Roku TV channel. That's another form of media. My point is that you can put all of these forms of media out without taking up a lot of your time, because you're still producing pretty much the same content, and you can take that and be everywhere all at once. What was that? What was that?
Well, I'm saying you're kind of reusing it in I was saying you're kind of taking the original content and reusing it, kind of like a sample.
Yeah, you can reprocess it.
Like I resample my own work. Yeah, I tend to have this idea of resampling my own stuff and then using it for my own thing instead of sampling somebody else's thing. But that's the idea, what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing is, I always talk about the comedian Kevin Hart. I tell people, I said, whether you think Kevin Hart is funny or not, you will not ignore him because he's everywhere. And that is by design. Kevin Hart,
he makes sure
he's not only, he's not just on TV commercials. He's not just in feature films. He's done documentaries. He's done streaming television. He's done podcasts. He's done audio books. He's done physical books. He is everywhere. And he does that by design. And I always say to people, why aren't you doing it? And it ain't because the money. You don't have to have Kevin Hart's money to do that stuff. You just have to do it.
No, you can't do it.
Right. And I hear a lot of people say, well, yeah, but he's doing too much. It's like, no, he's not. And you know this from being an entertainer. An entertainer, you can disappear quickly.
So you got to be present or people forget you. If you don't show up for 3 months, you could lose it.
True.
Doing a movie, if you don't make sure you're on social media, you get so into the role and you don't take care of your Twitter, you don't take care of your Instagram, you people think you fell off the planet.
They sure do. You're right. And that's what I tell people. It's like, this should be the same thing for you. If you're a business person, you should be putting yourself out there. Make sure people can find you. And that's the one thing I always want to get across to people, is that we've been taught to find out who our audience is and go to them. No, make it so they can find you. Because if you're searching for them, it's harder to get them interested. They need to be looking for what you offer. I mean, if I could use the music analogy for that right now. It's like, as a musician, your audience needs to be able to find you. Meaning this is where you're putting out your music online. You're on social media with your music. You're performing live somewhere. They need to know where to find you. If you kind of try to find every fan yourself, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So you need to make it so they can find you. And that's what a lot of people aren't doing in business. They're trying to find those people and make it so you're visible.
But I mean, music, we have this kind of throw it at the wall, like so many distribution channels. I probably got like 35 channels that my music goes out to. Well, the 35 distribution networks it goes to.
That's good.
I do what you're saying. I take every podcast and I make it a blog page on Fan Electric. Podcast gets a blogger page with a landing page that has multiple places that you can find a podcast on Facebook, or you're listening on iHeartRadio, because we get put over to our iHeartRadio, and that's audio. Apple Podcast, that's audio. And so we have an automatic distribution of all of our video stuff gets converted to like 11 platforms, because in the podcast world, the audio platforms are still kind of king. It reaches a certain niche, but that video is then converted to audio, so it gets the other niche.
Yep. You're right. And the thing is that a lot of people right now don't understand that they just stick with one area. That means you're missing out on all those other people that want to hear your content or see your content. If you don't address them and put something out there, you're missing them, and they'll go find someone else to entertain them.
Yeah, that's why people said, well, we should only interview musicians. And then, we started interviewing painters and film directors and actors. And they said, well, why are you opening up to that? Because it's all creative. And for a long time, we were just with creatives. And then we opened it up to like, life coaches, mentors, podcast, other
Mhm.
podcasters. And it's given our growth, like exponential growth in what people in our reviews, people will say, like, he interviews a group of people. I find it very entertaining because I never know who he's going to talk to. And instead of
That's
having
good.
this idea, well, you got to have a narrow
That's
focus, you should
good.
only do
They
this.
say that.
And I know there are people that say that, but I haven't done it that way.
But no, that's good that they don't know what to expect from you.
Yeah, I mean, some
They
people like the expected, and you got a certain fan that's like, "Oh, I only want that."
Yeah,
But
that's good.
it seems like the podcast world is opening. Like I know I
Mhm.
talked to his podcaster, and he said he was like the men's gentleman's podcast, and then he started having him on the show, and he got phenomenal growth. So he couldn't just say, "Well, it's only for men," because then he got
Right.
started getting a very large female.
Well, the thing is, he could say that. Some females love listening to men's shows because they think it gives them some
I
insight
mean,
into us.
maybe he could have. Oh, inside
Right.
story. Well, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
he
they
could
think
have.
they
You
think
still
they get
kept
some
it
insight into
gentleman's.
our inner workings.
Yeah, inside scoop. Yeah, I guess that's another marketing technique. You kind of do the opposite of what you think people want.
Yeah,
Exactly what
yeah.
they want.
Hey, you'd be surprised.
So we've talked about being omnipresent and using multiple platforms, multiple media,
Mhm.
print media, books, blogs, write articles. What do you think about like selling services? Like what I've year like to a lot of people, like the life coach, mentor type of
Mhm.
market people I've talked to always
Yeah.
have like programs or services that they
Mhm.
bring people to a convention or they bring them and it's like a
Yeah.
value add proposition.
Yeah.
Like, is that really like the new trend?
Well, here's the thing. It's your podcast. If you have a service, you better sell it on your podcast. I mean, I hear people ask me that all the time. It's like, well, is it okay to sell? I'm like, it's your show. If you don't sell your product on your show, who else is going to do it? Like, you better do it on your. Now,
You can
here's
put
the
on
thing.
somebody else's
Don't,
show.
right. Don't make the whole podcast about you selling your product like you said, as a value add. But you better do
Mhm.
it though. You better sell it on your show because it's yours. That's why you started the thing. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to sit there. I mean, I market on my podcast, and like I said, I better market on my podcast. If I don't, I can't expect someone else to market my product on their podcast. So I had better do it. And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
all in
yeah.
favor of it. But as a value add, you don't have to do it every episode. You don't have to do it every episode, but it's definitely
Mhm.
something. If you have a product or a service, let the people first of all, make sure that the content of your podcast gives them something valuable. Make sure it gives them something that
Mhm.
they like. They're like, wow, that's interesting. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Oh, wow, I'd like to know more. So then when you got them there, offer what you do because you've already got them interested in what you're saying. You've already put yourself at a level to where they say, okay, this person knows something. I can learn from them. So now they'd be more than willing to pay for it to get it. Excuse me. But if you don't give them anything, you just go straight to pitch, 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 you're going to lose them. But I definitely am in favor of you
Yeah, yeah.
offering your
Then it was
products
like
and
an info.
services on
Yeah,
your
it's
podcast.
I guess it's just the guess the whether or not you become like an entire infomercial or you still have the value of feeling like it's not an infomercial because some people once they see that infomercial it's like I'll tune out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a balance to like unless they're looking for that if you
Yeah.
just vibe of it's an infomercial like 90% of it, maybe you're not going to retain
And
certain people.
I'm glad you said that because you can bake it into your podcast, meaning that at the beginning of your podcast. You can do the intro and you can tell them what you got on the show today. And you can say, hey, guys, look, I got something great for you guys later we're going to talk about. Then in the middle of your podcast, you can give them a tease like, hey, I have this program that's going to help you to actually do what I just talked about. And then you go on a little later. Then towards the end, say, hey, remember I told you about that program? I had something for you. This is what it is. And blah, blah, blah. You can talk. And still, don't make it a long time. If you want more information, do this. Give them a call to action and then get out. Don't stay on it forever, but keep teasing it throughout the podcast to get them interested. And then at the end, give them a call to action and get out.
So that's your media experience coming in, where you like know where to place the right information because you've been in the game. Like because like somebody comes in and and I seen some dude in there and they're like, the whole thing is they're trying to sell like muscle milk the whole show, and I'm like, okay, and I'm like, I don't really want. It's like don't just like you just hit me over the head with it so much. It's like I'm gonna tune out. But
you're right, though. It's an infomercial. You're right.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, it's just the infomercial. Yeah, there's different variations of how I'm going to buy that milk. So like you can earn money from all kinds of media. I'm aware of that because like I've been getting into situations where, as a musician, people say, "Well, how are you going to pitch music?" People have like taste. They have all this taste. But what was synchronized, and then being a musician that other musicians want to work with. And every time I'm coming out, a lot of times I get offers by just being out here for people. I work with other people. I give feedback on other people's music. I'll do like I'll add like bass lines or work on a production. And because I work with I got this Rolodex of musicians, it's like being out here gives me work that I didn't even expect, and that work is actually probably more valuable than my Spotify royalty.
Nice.
But so you can monetize where you don't necessarily have to be in the top 10 to actually still be getting money. You can get money because you can have a proposition. Maybe you don't have to have as much quantity to make money as you might think. Like I got to push 1 million downloads or to get working with another artist. Work with another artist, you could get a bigger payday than getting the million downloads.
We have been
downloads. You won't make money.
We've been misled into thinking that we all have to be Joe Rogan, and that's not the case. You don't have to have all those downloads to start making money. Now, keep in mind, you do have to be creative. You do have to think of various ways, because a lot of the big companies, they want you to have a lot of downloads. Like I said, Joe Rogan ruined it for a lot of us. But the thing is, you don't have to do that. There's so many creative ways you can. Here, you live in New Hampshire. I guarantee you that there are businesses in New Hampshire that would love to have you promote their business on your podcast. They'll pay you for it. I mean, you can go to your local radio station. Go local.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked into that. I guess that's one thing is that we've kind of stayed away from it because they like, I don't know, the creative people kind of don't like too much of that. But I am thinking about it now that I have a different group of people I'm interviewing. Like musicians tend to be somewhat opposed to too much commercialism.
Well, here's the thing: bills have to be paid regardless. So.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: you can get someone.
I've been able to do pitch,
You can get someone to sponsor your podcast who actually is a creative. They may produce I don't know a newspaper for creatives out there, and they may want more exposure. Well, have them come on your podcast, and then have them buy a commercial spot on there. There may be a music store that may want to advertise what they sell on your podcast. And it's a lot of different things you can do that. It's just that I tell people, be creative. Don't look at you're not going to get the big corporate companies to sponsor your podcast when you start out. It takes some time to get to that level, but then there are people you can get to be not the sponsors but partners. And with a partner, it's different than just a sponsor. A sponsor, you may want to just run a commercial for them. A partner, they're part of everything that you're doing with your podcast, your emails, your newsletters, everything. You put their name in there, you promote the heck out of them, basically trying to get them clients. And they will pay even more money for that because you're actually basically being a brand evangelist for them. So, and it's just a lot of different ways that you can get money. Like you said, selling your own products and services, selling someone else's products, or being an affiliate is another way to make money from your podcast.
Yeah, we've done affiliate type of advertising back in the day. We've had different pitches we've done through like different works that we're part of. And so they've liked the fact that we have this podcast and we're able to do like this mic actually came from a company 512 Audio. And they say if you use it on the podcast, we'll give it to you for free. And they did.
There you go.
so like I've been in that kind of game.
Exactly. There are a lot of ways to get in the
I've got a lot of equipment.
A lot of different ways.
You can do. I get a lot of stuff. I get a lot of stuff from companies that want me to try stuff out. And, from like companies that are the music and stuff. And so I get like different pedals and. You'd be surprised what companies are willing to give you. And so I didn't get into it to do that, but it started to happen. So like, okay, I'm gonna take advantage.
And it's not even taking advantage. It's just that it's an opportunity.
So what do you feel?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you can't throw it away.
You're accepting it. You're accepting.
So how do you feel the Media Boss podcast does for most people? Like, what do you feel that it does?
Well, I'm hoping that it gives them the idea that they can control their media. I'm hoping that it gives them an idea to think that, you know what, I don't have to depend on someone else to get my message out there. I'm hoping that it allows them to feel that, you know what, I can attract my clients more if I just focus on using media to get my message out there, because I can actually make it so I'm visible to them instead of them searching for me. That's what I'm hoping the podcast does. I'm really hoping that it puts people in perspective that, you know what, I can do this myself. I can control my media and I can be the one to draw my ideal client to me.
I think that's a good way to close up on the hour coming up. But again, I'm going to go and repeat the link below, www.5 ways to pay to payingclients.com. So 5 ways to payingclients.com with the number 5. And again, maybe you can go again what they'll find there.
Sure. They are going to get my complimentary training on how you can get more clients to pay you and going over reasons why those clients aren't paying you. So there's some tweaks that you can make in your business to get more clients to pay you just by going to 5 ways to payingclients.com.
I am going to take some of your advice and get some of my local New Hampshire companies. Because of COVID, I was kind of just homebound, but now things are opening up. So now I'm probably going to take some trips around to talk to some folks.
I produce podcasts and my clients do it all the time.
Like
That's good.
That's a really good idea. It's a practical idea you just gave me, and I'm gonna go. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff with online, but I haven't done the face-to-face stuff because of the COVID situation. But things are getting more normalized. So now I could get to a point where I could actually deal with my local, environment
Right.
better than I did in the last 2 years.
I love it.
Thank you very much. I think you've given a lot of people a lot of good ideas, and I think
Thanks for having me.
lot of, no matter what you do, there's a lot of nuggets in what we've talked about here that will help you out in terms of like people who are artists do podcasts, business people do podcasts, mentors do podcasts, life coaches, all
Mhm.
different types of people are doing podcasts. And you usually
Yep.
are trying to sell a service or a product or your art, and then finding a way to connect back to paying clients, your customer is the client, whether you're an artist or a business. And so you want to find a way to get that your life's work to that person. You have to think about marketing, and musicians
That's
are
right.
notorious for not wanting to do that. But as well, if you're going to be yourself, you got to start taking the reins. If you're going to be your own person, independent, then you have to get into it and start paying attention to the marketing aspects of the business, not just the art.
That's right.
The program